Hello and welcome to the video on date tracking in eBusiness Suite. Before we look at it in the application, let's take a quick look at what it offers. Date tracking means almost every data is dated in HR. That is, there is a start date and an end date. One can change the start date to any desired date and enter the data accordingly from that date. So system allows data up to 31st December 4712 to be entered in the system. When data is entered, we put the start date as whatever we need, and system will automatically put a date of 31st December as the end date. For example, when we create a job, if you put a start date of 1st June 2020, the start date would be 1st June 2020. End date would be 31st December 4712. Now, this may not be displayed in the application, but in the table behind the scene, the data would be updated in the corresponding column. And an employee, let's say, starts on 8th of June 2020, and the default end date, since he is an active employee, default end date would be 31st December 4712. So date tracking happens in two modes. One is the update one. So in update mode, history is retained. That means whatever data you change, there would be history against that. So it's possible for you to go back and look at it. Now, name of tables that have date track data ends in _F. This is one way to know which tables have an end date. I have date track data in that. For example, employee Rajesh Kumar starts on 8th of June 2020. End date is 31st December 4712, and marital status is single. Okay, so his start date is 8th of June. Initially, the record starts from 8th of June, and his marital status is single. On 1st of July 2020, he gets married. That means from 1st of July, his marital status changes to married. So what the system is going to do is, if you make a update as of 1st of July 2020, system will create the record of Rajesh Kumar with starting from 8th of June, ending on, his system will start the record for Rajesh starting from 1st of July 2020 and ending on 31st December 4712 with the marital status as married, because he got married on 1st July. So after 1st July, he is married. Now, what happens to the original record when he was single? Now, he ceased to be single on 1st of July. That means till 30th of June, his marital status remains single. So the start date would be 8th of June 2020, which is his original start date, and end date would be 30th of June 2020. Okay. Now, when we try to fetch records from the database, which will show me the latest date. So the query should have a condition which will fetch you the latest record or a date effective record, depending on what you want to query. So option one, where effective end date is 31st December 4712. So you can write your entire query, and at the end, you can say where effective date is equal to 4712, 31st December 4712. And this condition must apply to all the date track tables in your query. Second option is you can have a sys date. You can say where sys date between effective start date and effective end date of every date track table. So this will ensure, as of today, whenever you're running that query, the system will always fetch you the current record as of that day. The third option is you can pass an effective date as a parameter. So in a report or in a PLSQL package, this is what we do, where we pass the effective date as a parameter. And the best way is it is the best way as it can fetch any record based on the effective date. So if your effective date is today, system will fetch you the current record. If the effective date is, let's say, 2 years back, then whatever the record that was active as of that date in the past will be displayed. All right. So third option is probably the most generic and the best way to display records based on an effective date. And remember, the application also uses the same way to display your records. So when you go into a form or a screen, it will ask you for the start date, and based on the date, we call it session date. So based on the session date or the effective start date, you can see the record accordingly. All right. Now with this is about the update. Now the next one, we come to the correct mode. So the date tracking also has a correct mode where you don't need to maintain the history. This is more in case of where there is a mistake in entering the data and you don't need to enter or maintain the history of an incorrect record. So let's say we go back to our employee Rajesh Kumar, who started on 8th of June 2020, end date is 31st December 4712, and his marital status is single. Now, 1 month later, he realizes that his status is single, whereas he is actually married when he joined. So that means as of 8th of June, he was originally married, but due to some reason, either he left the field blank or somebody filled it up or there was some oversight, the status got updated to single. So there was a mistake. Now this mistake needs to be corrected because he needs to be shown as married from 8th of June. So in that case, there is no need to maintain history. Original record will be directly changed without a second record. In the table, what's going to happen is the original record where we have Rajesh Kumar, start date 8th of June 2020, end date 31st December 4712. The marital status will be corrected from single to married. Okay. Now, another thing, for every date track record, there is an object version number which is maintained automatically by the application table. So every time you make a change, the object version number is going to be incremented. So having said this, let's now take a look at the application and see how we do that. Now coming to the application, once the screen opens up, the first step you should do is go and change the effective date to the date that you want. Okay, so let's say I want to do some transactions as of 1st Jan 22. So I'll date track to 1st of Jan and say okay. If I want to hire a new person, I will click new and see the date is now showing as 1st Jan 22. So suppose I hire a person. I put a date. Create employment, or I can do placement depending on how I want to do it. If it is placement, then it will be contingent worker. So then I save it. Initially, the status of the person is, let's say, single. So when the person joins, it is single. Okay. And after maybe 2-3 months, the person gets married. So you need to do the alter effective date Okay, as and when required. If the date is something else, by default, it will be the current date. In case you need to change it, you can click this reset, so it will become today's date. And let's say the person got married in July or in June, 15th of June, the person got married. So you are now date tracking and updating the person's record. So we now go and change the status from single to married. So you are presented two options. You click on update. Okay. And then see the record is right now 1st of Jan 22 because that is the start date of the person's record. Then I save it. So the date now changes to 15th of June 22, which is the date on which the person got married. If I were to look at the history, I go to tools, there is a date track history, and I can see two lines. From 1st of Jan 22 till 14th of June 22, there was no, a marital status. Now, if you look at the full history, you will be able to see it here. Okay, so this line is single and this is the married. Now, here the current, as of now, whichever is the current effective record, that will be displayed here. Suppose I were to do the change and move the date to, let's say, 1st of May. Say, okay. Now I go and look at the date track history. See, the second record becomes the effective because as of 1st of May 22, this record is effective. That is, the effective date is between from date and to date. All right. Now here you see the date is null. That means there is the end date is null in the application. But if you were to look in the database table, you would find that the data is correct. At this point of time, suppose I want to change the person's name from 1st of May and I want to put in a middle name of Nisha Sanjay Gupta. I again get a update or a correction. Now suppose this is a correction, then I will click on this, which means it will be updated from 1st of Jan. So if I now go to date track history and look at the record here, see this has been updated. So when I look at this full history, so Nisha Sanjay Gupta is the full name. And you can see the middle name here. Okay. If you want the same thing to be carried forward, you would have to go and change it to the corresponding date record. Okay. So this completes our practice on the date tracking. And one more thing to remember, when the date is changed on a primary form like this, people enter and maintain the first date track form. If you change it on this, you go to any other form, the date will remain whatever it was on the first screen. It does not change. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Now this is 1st of May. If I were to go to assignment screen and change the date to, let's say, today's date or a date before today, let's say 1st of July, and I do certain transactions and then I close this and come back, and the date here remains 1st May. If I go back to assignment, it will be reset to 1st May. The 1st July date does not remain on a second form. Okay, remember this. So it will be reset each time you to the date that you change on the main form, the first starting form. So with this, we have this alter effective date and the date track history that we covered today in this video. Thanks for watching.